Today is Friday, September 17. I'm Pastor Michael, and this is Wilderness Wanderings. Our text is Deuteronomy 14:22. Be sure to set aside a tenth of all that your fields produce each year. It may surprise some of you that I have never preached on this text, nor have I written any devotionals on it, and for good reasons. Since I chose to go through Deuteronomy, I need to break my own tradition. The first half won't do for wilderness wanderings because it is all about clean and unclean food. Thankfully, we do not need to follow those codes anymore. I do like my pork. The second half of the chapter is introduced with our text. Its implications are worked out in the following verses. Before I explain my avoidance of this text, let's explore tithing in Israel. This is where the whole concept of the 10% tithe comes from. Each Israelite family was to set this aside for several purposes. First, as Tony Campolo reminded the church years ago, Israel was to go and party. Verse 23 and 26. Yep, you did hear that right. God instructed Israel to take their tithe, grain, wine, sheep, goats, etc., to the place where God was worshipped. If they lived far away, they could sell their produce and buy what they liked closer to the worship center. There they would party. The celebration had a twofold purpose. They would rejoice in God for the provisions he had given, and they would learn to revere him. Verse 23. Israel was to fear the Lord, not in a stodgy, somber, arms folded, or terrified kind of way. Their fear and reverence for God came from paying attention to the care and love which he was pouring out. It was not fear of judgment that was to motivate Israel's faith, but joy in the Lord. If you are thinking that 10% is way too much to spend on one party, you are quite right. The Lord had established several Levite cities within the boundaries of Israel. The tribe of Levi did not receive an inheritance along with the rest of the tribes because they worked at the place of worship. They were dependent on God for provision, but God did not intend to airlift supplies into these towns. Rather, he instructed the Israelites to leave part of their tithes in them. Verse 27. God would provide for the Levites through these tithes. Notice that God does not specify how much should be left there. These gifts for the Levites were also a food bank for those in need. Moses specifies the foreigners, the fatherless, and the widows. In the ancient economy, these groups were the most vulnerable. Yet in Israel, they would have a place to go. There would be provision for those who fell on difficult times. As such, in Israel, the 10% tithe provided for the worship of God and those who administered that worship, but also to ensure that the needy would be cared for. However, the emphasis is not on the percentage. The emphasis throughout is on the relationship between God and his people. The people are to worship and revere God. They are to rejoice in all the material goods God provides, and to liberally share them with those in need. As the Lord blesses them, they are to bless others. The chapter ends, so that the Lord your God may bless you in all the work of your hands. Verse 29. It is this emphasis on joyfully and liberally passing on God's blessings that makes its way into the New Testament. The most explicit treatment of it is in 2 Corinthians 8 and 9, which includes this summary. And God is able to bless you abundantly, so that in all things at all times, having all that you need, you will abound in every good work. Chapter 9, verse 8. When I have needed to preach on giving, I have avoided the language of tithing and used this verse as my touchstone. Too much Christian preaching on tithing smells like law. You must give 10%. I think it more biblical to begin and to end with God loves a cheerful giver, 2 Corinthians 9:7. So, how will you share the things that God has blessed you with? As you journey on, go with the blessing of God. May the peace of the Lord Christ go with you, wherever he may send you. May he guide you through the wilderness, protect you through the storm. May he bring you home rejoicing at the wonders he has shown you. May he bring you home rejoicing once again into our doors.